Hi, and welcome to this walkthrough for our Appalachia Progressive Mountain Dulcimer. Progressive just means that while Appalachia can sound like the traditional folk instrument that it is, you can also do things that wouldn't normally be possible, like playing in any key. You can see by the fret arrangement that a mountain dulcimer is usually diatonic, which limits the playing to a single key that depends on how the strings are tuned. But we sampled our dulcimer chromatically, so you can play in any key. Like most of our instruments, there are two main playing modes. One with the strum button off, which we'll call solo mode. And one with the strum button on. Let's start with solo mode. This slider lengthens the release time. To the left, it responds more like a guitar, and to the right, it rings out like a traditional mountain dulcimer sound, and works well if you're not using a sustain pedal. It really just depends on the part you're playing. There are three main buttons at the bottom. The picker, which will play an automated picking pattern for chords up to 4 notes. You can select different patterns using this menu, or with this dial, which can be automated. There are controls for strength and overlap, and you can choose a note value in order to sync properly with the time signature of your project. Then there's the harmony button, which can also be activated with a key switch. This, of course, adds a harmony note to whatever you play. And you can choose from several styles. The key dial is probably the most important single control. I've been playing in D major here, which is kind of the native key of this dulcimer. Its strings are tuned to D, A, and D. How this dial is set determines the key of the harmony, as well as the intervals used for articulations like hammer-ons, pull-offs, grace notes, and trills. Let's talk about the articulations. You may have noticed that I've been triggering hammer-ons with key velocity. You can use key velocity, key switches, or both. Clicking on this icon will display the controls for switching articulations with key velocity. There are 3 zones, and you can adjust the velocity switch points here. And on this side, you see the articulation chosen for each zone. To change an articulation, just click on it. There's a simple up slide, hammer on, and pull off, up and down grace notes, which are like the hammer-ons and pull-offs, but with more of a slide. Trills. And mutes. Any articulation can be assigned to any velocity zone. Most of these are tempo synced, and you can adjust the note values in the settings panel. This button displays the controls for how the different strings are mapped on the keyboard. This can change the sound of the instrument pretty dramatically. Okay, on to strum mode. A mountain dulcimer player will normally strum a melody and chords at the same time, and with Appalachia, you can do that. Again, I'm playing in D, but if you're more comfortable with just the white keys, you can use one of the C presets. Appalachia doesn't have automated strumming patterns, which really wouldn't work very well for how the instrument is played anyway. so it's manual strums that alternate between up and down strums automatically. You can select presets using the menu or using this dial, which can be automated. You can think of the notes in the 2-octave range in Strum Mode as the fretboard of the dulcimer. Each key can have its own chord, and a whole set of chords is a preset. Just hit any key in the playing zone, and you can edit or create any chord by clicking and dragging the note. You can save your changes here, or reset the chord to the default with this button. Here's how the presets are organized. There are melodic presets that use the low string for melody in every key. And the melodic 2 presets that use the high string. Well, strings, since there are 2 of them tuned in unison, but again, in every key. Appalachia will sound different in different keys, of course. But what if you need hammer-ons and slides in your strums? There are key switches that let you add hammer-ons, pull-offs, and grace notes for each string individually. Or we designed a way to have velocity-controlled articulations, just like in solo mode. This turns on the articulation switching for chord mode. Now you'll see some of the notes displayed in colors which correspond to the different arts. You'll only hear the articulations if you play at a high enough velocity to trigger them. This makes it much easier to get a more interesting and realistic performance. Also down here we have a control for the looseness of the strum, scrape, which is the sound of the pick over muted strings, which you can add for a more aggressive sound, and this dial, which will give you muted strums at lower key velocities. Clicking on this icon will show the controls for velocity articulations. Here, each string has its own controls. There's a little volume fader for each string. This is great for turning down a droning string if it seems to be covering up the melody string. Then you can choose the articulations for each string. Again, play the note you want to edit, then choose an articulation. This sets the velocity point above which the articulations are played. And this gives you control over the volume of the articulations. The settings panel is pretty straightforward. Here are the timing controls for the articulations, key switches, some global controls, and 3 effects: body, a compressor, and reverb. We go through all of this in more detail in the user guide, which you can download on the product page. Thank you for taking the time to check out Appalachia.